Welcome to Cat's Got Your Tongue. This is our feline-friendly podcast in association with the charity Cats Protection. I'm Adam Brown, certified cat obsessive and proud cat dad. In each episode, we chat to celebrity guests, hearing all about the cats in their lives and why they love them so much. We're back for Series 3. This is Cat's Got Your Tongue. So, it's so good to be back for Series 3 of Cats Got Your Tongue, and I'm super excited to get into it. But I thought, just before we do get into the new series, to kind of give a bit of an update about what's been going on with me and my cat. Obviously, Ruby was my cat, who, if you listen to this podcast, I spoke about a lot. And Ruby was such an important part of my life. Now, very sadly, at the end of 2024, in November, Ruby passed away. I had to make the really, really tough decision to take her to the vets, and unfortunately, we lost her. It was really, really sad. It's been really tough. I'm not going to lie. It's been really hard when a cat has played such an important part in your life for the last 5 years. But yeah, she wasn't too well. It was suspected initially that she had a dental issue. She was kind of drooling quite a lot. I took her to the vets, and they did some tests, and turns out she had like a kind of a growth underneath her tongue, and it was making it difficult for her to eat and to drink. So they did an operation, removed that, and sent it for a biopsy. And then it turned out that it was actually cancerous, and it had spread. So there wasn't much they could do for her, unfortunately. So got to a stage where she was losing weight, and she couldn't eat, she couldn't drink anymore. And yeah, it was actually the right thing to do and the right decision to make for her to make it so she wasn't suffering anymore. So yeah, it has been tough. I'm not going to lie. It has been a really, really testing couple of months, especially when you love cats as much as I do. You know, I'm wearing a shirt with cats all over it. And if you listen to this podcast, you know that I'm obsessed with cats. So yeah, a couple of weeks after Ruby passed, I did get a new cat from Cats Protection, a rescue cat called Cinnamon, which no doubt you'll hear more about her throughout Series 3. But yeah, just wanted to give you a bit of a heads up and let you know. And yeah, just kind of touch on cat bereavement a little bit, which is what we're going to be going into in a bit more detail in this episode of Cat's Got Your Tongue. Of course, we have got a celebrity guest as well, as always. So I think without further ado, we should find out who this week's celebrity guest is. So each week on Cat's Got Your Tongue, I'm joined by a guest who absolutely adores cats just as much as I do. And today's guest is an actor, writer and comedian from Derry, starring in TV shows like Derry Girls and The Blame Game. And she's got a brand new stand-up show called Get Your Pink Back, which is going to be touring the UK and Ireland throughout May and June. It's Diona Doherty. Have I said your name right?
You have, I think. I think I say it wrong, to be honest. In Derry, we say Doherty, and that is, I believe, incorrect. People tend to say Doherty, give it the 3 syllables. We say Doherty. I think you could say, I've been called worse.
Right, okay. So I'm kind of right, you think? Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
That's good. All right, okay. That's a good start then, at least. So, I mean, before we kind of get fully into it, I mean, are you excited about the opportunity just to talk about cats for a little bit?
Yeah, because cats can be really divisive, which I don't know why. It's crazy. Like, some people are like not cat people, and obviously some people are dog people. But I before I had kids, you know, my cats they were my babies, you know, and it was always like such a big thing in my life. And I used to hate whenever you'd meet people and they're like, not into cats, and you're like, why we will not get on.
Yeah, I'm exactly like that. I know. Yeah, I basically, everyone I meet, if they don't like cats, I do my very best to kind of just try and convert them to becoming a cat lover. We've actually varying shades of success. I've actually managed to get some people on board with it. Other people are like, Adam, you're a bit weird now. Go away.
Have they gotten on board to the extent where they now have a cat, or just like they'll tolerate your conversation?
I don't know if they're just appeasing me sometimes, where after I've shown them like the 100th picture of my own cat, they're like, okay, yeah, I do like cats, really, I do. Yeah, just please go away from me now and stop showing me pictures.
I'm just trying to get a train somewhere. I'm on my way to work and I don't know this man.
yeah, I don't even know you, mate. So earlier on, I was talking about my own experience recently with cat bereavement. I know it's obviously something which so many cat owners at some point throughout the life having a cat are going to have to go through. And I lost my cat Ruby, who was like, well, I know it sounds strange, but she was my closest friend in a way, because it was just me and her. We lived together, and I lost her at the end of last year, November. And I know, Diona, you've been through it too, haven't you? You've experienced cat bereavement.
That's not even that long ago as well, November. Now, it's been a few years since, well, that we don't have Buttons anymore. And Zippy, we had two cats actually, and we don't have them anymore for two different reasons. We lost Buttons, and Buttons passed away, and Buttons was my first baby, and as you say, you live with the cat's with you all the time. And I used to sleep beside my cat. I would kiss his face off. This cat was like it came from my womb, and we loved Buttons so much. And when you'd come into the room, you get so good at communicating with your pets. I think no matter what your pet is, that from the different meows what they want from you. And sometimes they're just chatting, and I loved being around Buttons. But Zippy, our other cat, was feral, but in the most fun way. Zippy would just disappear for a week on end, but on an adventure. You'd think, oh God, I'd be outside searching for the cat and looking for him. And he would come back with a new collar, he's had a whole story, and he had a new owner for a week. The owner would be like, oh yeah, we've had a great time. I got him this new ball. Do you want to take it home? And he would just be having the most amazing adventures. And that is how we no longer have him too. He just left one day for the jungle. He was like, that's me, guys. I'm going back to the motherland.
Really?
Our cat Zippy, if he spoke, would be like this. He was like a little street cat. He knew everything, and he was like, wow. He was like a little hard man, and he was just he loved affection, but he also just wanted to roam, and he really wanted to be outdoors. And we always had an open door policy with our cats. They were in and out, and they were but Buttons loved being inside most of the time, but Zippy would be away. And genuinely, one time I got a phone call from my niece, who was 14 at the time, and she was in the local swimming pool about a mile from my house. And she was like, well, Zippy's in the changing rooms of the swimming pool. I was like, what? And she was like, he's just made his way in here. We're all petting him, he's fine. And I went and picked him up. And then another time I was in the post office, and they were like, oh, your cat was in here yesterday. And this would happen all the time.
So, I mean, obviously, kind of losing two cats in different ways. How did that make you feel? Were you sad? I mean, obviously, it's with Zippy, he's kind of a free spirit. So, was it a different feeling to not having him compared to?
It's it is the same as having kids. The first one is your favorite. No, I'm joking. No, yeah, it's definitely different, because obviously, with Zippy, I felt like he was honestly safe on the streets. That guy knew how to look after himself, and when he really just wanted to roam. And when the last time he left, he was just gone for such he just honestly, it was a year and a half ago. And our cats are obviously chipped, so I don't believe that he came to any danger. I think he has been rehomed, and that they maybe just didn't take him to get a chip checked, and he's in my head, that guy's living his best life and he's doing fine. And we had to end the search eventually. But obviously with Buttons, it was different, and it's it is a bereavement process. My kids were obsessed with Buttons, and my daughter still asks about Buttons. And Buttons had 3 legs as well, which made he was such a vulnerable wee thing, and it made you feel all the more protective of him.
Yeah.
Because when he was a little kitten, he was hit by a car. Sadly, he had to lose a leg, which was a really difficult process for him to learn to walk again. But I mean, the most resilient animals are cats. Within a few months, he was jumping up 6-7 foot fences, roaming and hunting like he would have beforehand. And every day I was like, I'm so glad that we made sure that we took the chance to save his life, because he had the best life then.
So if you don't mind me going into it in a bit more detail, Diona, what actually happened to him then?
He got really sick as he got older, and he honestly, his immune system started breaking down, and the older he got, he started losing hair, he started getting bald patches, and he just got weaker and weaker and stopped eating, and then eventually passed away.
You know, like when it happened, did you respond to it and react to it in the way that you thought you would? Like, were you prepared? Were you prepared for how you felt afterwards? Because I found it really, really tough.
Was it a shock when you lost your Ruby?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, just very briefly, what happened with Ruby was that I noticed that she was drooling quite a lot. So I took her to the vet, and he was like, "Oh, it's probably a dental issue, because that happens when she had quite bad teeth. Apparently, that's what I got told when I rescued her." And then he did some investigation, and he was like, "Oh no, actually, her teeth are fine." And there was like a growth underneath her tongue. So they did an operation. They cut that away, and he said, "I've stitched it back up, but we sent it away for a biopsy." But she couldn't use her tongue then after the operation, so she couldn't drink, she couldn't eat properly. I had to syringe like water into her and everything. And anyway, the biopsy came back, and it was cancerous, and it spread to underneath her tongue, and it just got to a stage where it was just cruel. I needed to like her to be comfortable. So yeah, she was 11. So that's still relatively young, really.
Yeah,
so it
that
was,
is.
and I'd never. Ruby was my first cat. I don't have children, so it sounds ridiculous to some people who have not got cats and who have got children. That was like my child. Do you know what I mean? I had nothing to compare it to, so I just really struggled. I wasn't prepared for how much it was going to actually hit me and impact me.
Buttons had a very like human life, if you know what I mean. Like, you know, he lived like a human in our house.
So how long ago was that you lost Buttons?
2 years ago.
So since then, have you thought about getting a new cat, or?
I honestly don't think at the time, the space that I am in my life as well, that I would have the correct amount of time to give to a new animal. And I just think that's so important, that you're able to give them the right amount of time and love and affection that they need.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about yourself? Have you thought about, I mean, it's very early days.
Well, this is the thing. I think, you know, cat bereavement in general, I think for me, I think the grieving phase, there's no sort of one size fits all kind of rule to it. I think everyone's different, and it's weird because I don't know about you, but I went through all different emotions. It was kind of, you know, sadness, and then I'd be happy, like thinking, you know, back to the memories that I had with my cat, and then I'd be thinking, did I do the right thing? Should I have kept her alive for longer? Should it? And you go through all these kind of a roller coaster of emotions, and then I didn't have her, and it was about 2 weeks, and I was like, I can't be without a cat. I can't. My house doesn't feel right. I have to get another cat. So 2 weeks, I know, and it's weird because some people probably think, God, you've moved on quick or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But for me, I was like, I can't. My house just didn't feel like my house without a cat being there. And that's why it's different, because obviously I live on my own, so my house was extra quiet without the cat. So I adopted my current cat, Cinnamon, from Cats Protection, and she's a little sweetheart. But it's not about replacing.
It's great that you said your current cat, because that is how I refer to my husband.
Yeah.
That guy I'm currently married to. Cinnamon's a cute name as well. How did you name your cats? Because I always think that's really interesting.
This is a ridiculous story, by the way. So the name. I can't. So you get this right. So I went to Cats Protection, the local branch near me. I'd done some work with them before, and I thought, right, I'll go and see, you know, what cats they've got and whatever. So I went in, and I love tortoise shell cats, and calico cats are like my favorite. I mean, I love all cats, but you know, they're like my favorites. And they're like, oh, we've got a calico that's in called Cinnamon, a tortoise shell called Nutmeg, and there's a ginger and white one called Ginger as well. So they've all been rescued from a car park. They're abandoned. So I was like, oh my God, how can I not abandon these beautiful cats? So anyway, went in with the calico Cinnamon, and I was like, I need her. I'm going to take her. So I kept thinking, oh, I'll rename her something else. And I kept going, I need to think of a name for Cinnamon. Like, I need to rename Cinnamon. And then Cinnamon just stuck. So then when I came to actually take her, and the staff at Cats Protection were like, oh, we'll just double check the chip again, just to make sure that, you know. And their actual registered name was Princess Fluffy Bum.
Shut up.
So someone had actually registered her as that, and a registered cat's name on the chip was Princess Fluffy Bum, which of course the staff there thought it was the best thing ever. And they're like, Please keep it.
I would love to see you out in public with your cat with that beard, having to shout Princess Fluffy Bum.
I know. And I was like, oh, it's like, of all the names. So I was like, out the vets or something as well. And you know, they shout it out. And so I was like, oh, so.
My favourite thing is when you're in the waiting area of the vets and they come out and they're like, Buttons Haggerty, and they like give a surname.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, I know.
It's like
yeah.
the cat's gonna be like, yes, that's me. You can wait here, owner. I've got this. Like I'll the bill.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. So yeah, so she's Cinnamon, aka Princess Fluffy Bum. So
My husband and I have this constant argument about who named Buttons. Like I'm convinced it was me. I'm like, no, I came up with the name Buttons. I thought that was really cute. And like, it's like the Buttons character in the panto was like the jester and the funny, the fun. And I was like, Buttons. And he was like, no, it was me. So we always argue about it. And he doesn't actually have a reason why. He just thinks he came up with it. And then Zippy was because like Buttons and then Zip.
oh, okay. Just different ways of doing up a coat.
Yeah, second child syndrome where we just named him based off what we named the first one. That's a big care the attention. Because when I was younger, I had two goldfish called Cuff and Link. So they're like a cuff link, which is such an old man way of naming. When I was like a 6-year-old going, I'll name them Cuff and Link. I don't know. I was like some old man from the 20s. And I sort of stayed in that theme where I was like, okay, the second one has to match the first. I haven't done that with my actual children, to be fair, but I have with the cats.
I was going to say, I thought in a minute, if you tell me like your children are named after something and it's all,
Well, my daughter's called Winter, so it would have been funny if I'd called my son like Spring or something. I don't know, but no, he got Robbie.
The children named after all the seasons. That'd be brilliant. So did your cats, did they get on with each other?
Yeah, loved each other. Yep, they did. They'd completely different personalities. So I should have called them Chalk and Cheese.
Still, I love how committed you are to this kind of, having the names that complement each other.
Yeah, exactly. So Buttons was like this really placid, just real, like wanted held like a baby, and Zippy was like a gang leader. He wanted to be out in the street, be like, come on, girl. He was in and out of everyone's houses. I'm pretty sure he was burgling the houses. Like he was just like a wee rip. They were completely different. In fact, I think at times that it was a bad influence on Buttons. I had to keep them apart. You talk, man. Would you be doing what he's doing?
Do you think that, obviously with your job, being a comedian, did you sort of get much comedy from your cats? Because I think they're hilarious. I just think my cat's the funniest thing ever. I love it.
I used to talk about them on stage a few years ago. I used to talk about how judgmental they were. Do you know, like I'd talk about like I'd be like getting changed and I could just hear them being like, you haven't been to the gym this week, Just like the way they just sort of look at you. I used to talk about who I think each of my cats voted for in the elections based on their personalities. Which I'll not go into because it's very quite political. But yeah, I used to talk about them a lot. I haven't talked about them in the past maybe a year or two, but I definitely used to get like bits from them. But it's the same as parenting in the sense that you can't talk too much about the one thing or you lose half the audience.
Yeah.
I've never even met a cat. Stop talking about cats. They're like, I hate kids. Stop talking about your kids. So there's a fine line.
Do you find it like easy to kind of talk about your cats? I've obviously mentioned that, like, obviously, like one of your kids still asks about your cats and stuff. Do you ever find that it's got to the stage now, because obviously this has happened a couple of years back for you, that it's easier to kind of talk about it and not get upset?
Yeah, I mean, I do. Do you know, I actually feel more sad when I talk about Buttons losing his leg, because that was honestly, I felt a much more traumatic experience because he was so small and we'd only had him a few months, and at that stage he really was my firstborn. So I'm more than happy to talk about the cats and every aspect. It doesn't really make me too sad, but it honestly is the amputation side of it, which was so sad.
Yeah. So have you found a way to kind of have their memory? This is one thing that I kind of struggled with a little bit. Like, what did you decide to do to kind of keep them in the forefront of your mind, or as part of your family almost?
Well, we have their Christmas baubles on our Christmas tree. So we have like their ones with their name on it and a photograph in it, and I don't. This is gonna sound crazy, but I don't even have photographs of my kids in my house. I don't like to have like photographs around the house of like people. I just like to have like this bits of art or whatever. So there's no photographs around the house or anything, but we do have their Christmas baubles and their wee photographs around that and their names on it. Funnily enough, when Buttons was about about maybe like 3 or 4 months old, there was, the supermarket Lidl.
Yeah.
Well, they had a competition on their Twitter, and it was like, we're going to give away £100 voucher every day for the best Christmas photographs. And I had a photograph on my phone of the way kittens climb up inside Christmas trees. Of course, our cats were always supervised when there was a Christmas tree around, and we closed the door at night so they could never, because obviously it's dangerous. But he was like poking his wee tiny, wee gorgeous head through the tree, and I took a photograph of him. And Lidl sent me a £100 voucher, and I got my turkey with it. So thank you, Buttons.
He earned his keep that time, did he? Yeah.
Yeah. So at that time of year, we're always reminded of him. Yeah.
Do you know what I've found as well? I don't know. Since getting Cinnamon, I basically seem to like talk to her in a different way than I did with Ruby, because Ruby was a bit older. Cinnamon's only 3, so I feel like Ruby was a little bit more. I did sort of speak to her like she was a child, but I don't know. I think because she's a bit more dignified and she was a bit of an older lady. Whereas with Cinnamon, I'm a bit more like, well, I'm insufferable. Like I'm really, I'm even worse. I thought it couldn't get any worse. I thought I was cringy when it came to.
Get off TikTok, would you, Cinnamon? God's sake, take your earphones out.
Yeah, but I'm just like, because she's the cutest cat. I mean, maybe I'm being biased. It's like, but she's so cute. And I just like pick her up and cuddle her and speak to her in this like really embarrassing voice where I'm like, oh, this little baby. Oh, it's so bad. Awful. Do you ever used to do that when you have like a voice that you do for your cats?
Yeah, and my daughter does it now to her little brother, and I think it's called cute aggression. That's what I read up about it. Well, she talks to them like that all the time. She talks to and then it's like when something is so cute, you get aggressive.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know. Yeah, I know. And I think that that's about when you were in kittens, you're like, this is the cutest thing ever. I'm like, yeah. I was like, why am I? Yeah, they're so cute. You're angry. I'm like, what is that? How's that a thing?
Yeah, it's a thing called cute aggression, and my daughter does it with my son now.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, Diona, I mean, is anything that you could say in terms of advice that you could give someone who's going through cat bereavement? Because obviously we're coming at it from different perspectives, yourself and I, because it's quite new for me still, and I still get sad when I think about it. I'm not saying that you don't, but obviously you probably learn to kind of control it a little bit. And I think eventually, I don't know if I'm right in thinking or saying that it probably goes from that area where it's sad, and then suddenly you're at peace with it a little bit more, and you can eventually reflect back and think of the happy times. What advice would you give to someone?
I do think you're bang on there when you say like time is your best friend, time is a healer, and I know that is the most cliche thing to say, but it is true that when that bit of time passes, you do feel a little bit more at peace with it. And I suppose it's whatever, like we were just speaking about there, whatever little thing that you would have that would remind you of them in a positive, nice way, and just keep that around. And I think that's always nice, because when a person or a pet passes away, you don't have to forget about them. It's not like you're trying to forget about them, but you're trying to remember them in a happy light rather than in a sad way. And I suppose keeping something around, like for me, seeing like a bauble on the Christmas tree reminds me of having that little photograph of him on the tree that got me my Christmas turkey for free. So that's a fun memory to have.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's things like that. I suppose you can think back and
trigger something pleasant.
Yeah, that's really cool. Right, that was amazing, Diona. But don't go anywhere, because we're going to talk to one of our Cats Protection Paws to Listen grief support service team a little bit more about pet grief, and hopefully get some advice for anyone who's going through a similar thing. So we've been talking to the actress, writer and comedian Diona Doherty on Cat's Got Your Tongue. I've said your surname a different way this time, Diona, but I've been told that
that's fine.
Either works.
Yeah, it's a fun time.
And in this episode, we've also been joined by Victoria Foster, who is one of the Paws to Listen grief support service team from Cats Protection, to talk about the very real grief of losing a loved cat, because it is tough and it's something which all cat owners at some point have to face up to. So, Victoria, tell us a little bit more about Paws to Listen.
it's really good to be here with you both today. And I think before I kick off, actually, thank you for normalising cat grief. You know, it isn't something that we speak about a huge amount in society, and actually it's really useful for other people that might be going through something similar to you both to have heard your experiences with Ruby and Zippy and Buttons. So Pause to Listen provides free and confidential emotional support and practical information to anyone going through cat loss and who might be struggling with it. So it's a Cats Protection service, but anybody can access it. And it's not just reserved for when a cat has sadly died. We understand that grief is really complex and it exists beyond bereavement. So people can access Pause to Listen if they have a cat that might be nearing the end of their life. So Adam, you were saying about Ruby that she had that quite sudden decline in health before she sadly had to be put to sleep. And in those kind of circumstances, it can feel really helpful to have somebody to speak with kind of in preparation. So yeah, people can get in contact ahead of perhaps losing a cat. If a cat's gone missing, we know how stressful that can be. And Diona, you were saying obviously about going through that yourself, not knowing where they are, what they're doing, whether they're going to come home or not. That can leave so many questions for people. And we also offer support to people if they've had to reluctantly rehome a cat. Life circumstances can change so quickly. And unfortunately, sometimes that means that a much loved cat can't stay in the family home. So yeah, people can contact Pause to Listen and speak with our lovely team of volunteer listeners for any of those reasons. We also can provide a bit of practical information. People might ring up and have lost a cat and just not know, for example, how to speak to their children about grief and about death. And Diona, you were saying that you've obviously got a brood of young kids at home, and quite often the death of a pet might be the very first experience that young children have had of that, and it can be really hard for parents and caregivers to know how to even start those conversations. So people are welcome to speak with our team of volunteers if they just want a bit of guidance about maybe how to start those conversations.
Why would you advise having that conversation with a toddler? You know, with like my daughter, she's nearly 4 now, so she'll be a little bit younger. How would you advise that conversation to go to cause the least amount of trauma? Like we're quite open in our house about death. You know, I don't like to pretend it's something else and then later on then they get the shock of their lives. I like to be honest, but I just sometimes worry, is that even the right thing to do?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there in terms of trying to just be as straightforward as possible with young children. Ambiguity can cause more distress. So we say things like it's not always a great idea to use phrases like put to sleep with children, because actually that might instill a fear of them going to bed and not waking up in the morning. So we kind of say straightforward language is usually best. Obviously, you know your children best, you know kind of their temperaments, their character, what's age appropriate for them as well. And you know, it's very different speaking to a 2, 3, 4-year-old than it might be a teenager. With greater understanding. There is a bit of extra guidance on the Cats Protection website, just a short guide about how to speak to children and young people. So if any parents are listening to this and they're thinking, God, I'm going to have to navigate this as well, I don't know where to start, we've kind of got just some brief guidelines about what might be better for a child at what age. But
really helpful too when when Zippy used to just go on his adventures. There was a group of, there's lots of Facebook groups that are dedicated to like lost pets, and there was one for my area, and I think there's usually one for like most areas. But I would just go on there, and usually within a few hours there'd be a photograph of Zippy. If someone would be like, this little cat's around my street again, because everyone on this Facebook page, now my cat was famous on it because he was like, this cat again. He was like on there like every few weeks. But those pages are really handy as a real immediate protocol for people, I think, if they find their cat's missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because microchipping is now compulsory as well, that can really, really help. You know, if you're keeping those details up to date, the cat's chipped, they've gone on an adventure. Some kindly person has picked them up and taken them to a local vet's to be scanned. You're far more likely to be reunited.
I actually found at times our cat, Zippy, usually would get lifted from like the street that he lived in and taken to the vets, because a lot of people, I suppose it's hard to tell whether a cat's lost or not. You just see it and you don't know if it's just playing. And it's like he would get lifted from our street and taken to the vets, and I'd be like, oh, he was literally taken from our front door, but he's just outside eating or playing. And I think people are just being overly cautious, and I suppose that is a good thing in a way, you know, because he could have been lost. There was a child that lived in our street, and she was holding Zippy at one point, and Zippy was like trying to get down, and I remember going, sorry, would you mind not lifting the cat? Just I don't want him to scratch you by accident, and I also don't want him to be frightened if he's being lifted by someone he doesn't know. And she said, what are you talking about? This is my cat.
No.
I was like, no, that is my cat. That is our cat. You call him Zippy. If he was a dog, he would come towards me when I called his name, but he's not going to. I says, but he's called Zippy. And her friend went, no, that's her cat. He lives at her house. And I found out that he had been in her house 1 or 2 nights a week for the past 6 months.
I feel like if Zippy did speak, he would have been saying, I think you'll find I'm my own cat.
Zippy had hippie spirit, and Zippy was just off doing, like, living his best life. He's like, I'm not tying myself to an abode. I will be where I want to be when I want to be there.
Victoria, you know, it must be quite difficult, I think, for one of my great fears is my cat going missing. So Ruby, when I had her, she was an indoor cat. Cinnamon's an indoor cat, and I have this massive fear of them getting out, and I have this worry that they're not going to come back. And I know they would, but I have this it's like my biggest nightmare. I just think that for me, like, you know, grief and bereavement, is it different in the way that people deal with it in terms of if your cat passes away or if your cat goes missing? Because at least when your cat passes, you can have some sort of closure. But for me, it's the not knowing. I suppose it's slightly different for you, Diona, because Zippy was a free spirit, so you kind of, and like you say, he was quite streetwise, so he would probably be able to fight, you know, kind of fend for himself. But for me, the idea of, you know, a house cat getting out, domestic cat, you know, that's always indoor, getting out, and me not knowing, I think that'd be harder in some ways.
I think with us, we just accepted, like, okay, I accepted that he had been rehomed. I think if anything bad had happened to him, I would imagine he'd be found, you know, and that he'd be hopefully taken to a vet or something. But I have just assumed, in my head, he's probably living between that girl's house, a few doors down, that child, and like another house he found him at another time. So I have just accepted that. I think in order to be at peace with it, you have to just go, okay, I believe he's okay.
Yeah, like how would you? Is there any techniques or anything that people can, you know, if someone's listening now who has a cat that's been missing for a few weeks or a few months even, is there anything that can kind of help them kind of ease that pain, that worry? Mm-hmm. I know it's obviously really difficult, but is there any like techniques people can do or any advice that they can get?
It's such a difficult circumstance, and we kind of say that, you know, grief is as unique an experience as the cat is for each person. So what might be reassuring for one person really might not be for another. But I think once you've kind of been through those practical steps of what best to do if you've got a missing cat and you're left with all of those unanswered questions, maybe it really is just about having that opportunity to acknowledge that you're feeling really unsettled, that you're feeling consumed with worrying about what's happened to them, that you're left with lots of what ifs. And that's where we do say, you know, if you can speak with somebody, it can kind of take some of that energy out of that real anxiety. Such a tough one as well, because it can be really hard to speak with friends and family about grief when it's to do with a cat. I think, Diona, you were saying, you know, cats can be a really divisive topic. We get people that like love cats, people that hate them. I think you can feel really afraid of judgment if you're very upset about cat.
I do believe everyone can be converted. I grew up in a household where my dad was always like not a cat person, and he would openly tell us, he'd be like, I'm not a cat person. Like he literally would like not want to be near a cat. And then when I got a cat, it was almost like an act of rebellion against him. But he loved our cats. He used to sit with them on his knees, petting him, and he could every time he visited our house, he's like, I actually can't believe I'm allowing this cat to sit in my knees. And then when he would come in, he would look forward to sitting and having a little cuddle with the cat. And I don't think he had that same approach with other cats. I think he just got to know our cats. And I was like, see, if we just gave them all a chance.
I think, it's interesting you said there, Victoria, about feeling a little bit, I don't know, I think I kind of went through a little bit of that where I'm like, this sounds really strange, but I felt like I was more, I felt like I was a little bit, I felt like I was more upset when my cat died than when people like family members had passed, because I was expecting that. Do you know what I mean? Like my granddad was old and he'd lived a really long life, and I kind of knew that he'd been ill for a while, and I felt really guilty about that. Do you know what I mean? For a while thinking, does that mean that do you know what I mean? I've kind of struggled with like, have I shown too much emotion? Are people going to think it's just a cat, mate, get over it? You know what I mean? And it's hard, isn't it? Because I don't think that the way that you grieve is going to be the same as someone else, the way that someone else does. And I think there is an element of like feeling guilty that you're that upset about it sometimes when other people don't understand why you're that upset. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we hear that so often. We really do. I suppose I try and look at it at the sense of your cat is a family member and they're a constant companion and they provide routine and they're with you quite often, all day, every day, especially now that so much of us work remotely or we're just at home more than we were perhaps pre-pandemic. That little furry companion is there first thing in the morning, last thing at night, always pleased to see us. There's no arguing. But actually, we just see them so much more than perhaps we do with other people that we might have lost. And again, it's not that that means that we have more or less love for whoever's passed. It's just different. And I think a lot of people speak of feeling guilty about that too. I guess what I'd offer is your feelings are your feelings, just because it might be hard for others to understand how much you loved your cat doesn't make it wrong.
Yeah, totally.
And just because you might have cried more about them doesn't mean that you feel any other losses less keenly. It's just being expressed differently because it was a different relationship.
So Victoria, I kind of got another cat quite quickly after Ruby passed because I found it really hard not to have a cat. I was mentioning this to Diona before. I find it really hard not to have a cat in my house. Is there a right time that you should be looking at, getting another cat afterwards?
I'd say it's absolutely an individual choice. There is no rush to move on. There is no right or wrong time to get another cat if you feel that you would like to. But if it does come to a point where you feel ready to rehome another cat, it doesn't take away the love or care or the memories of any cats you've had before them. They're all unique individuals and you will love another one in a completely different way.
Yeah, because I think sometimes I felt a little bit of guilt of going, I feel like people kind of think I'm replacing my old cat. And, is there an expectation for my new cat to be exactly like my old cat? And they're not. Every cat's different, obviously. And I kept thinking, people are going to think that, like, it didn't take you very long to get a new cat, did it? Or whatever. And it's all these, like, thoughts where you're probably overthinking it. And I'm sure people aren't judgmental, but I know some people who they go years before they're ready to rehome.
Yeah, I think we do worry, don't we? We do worry what other people might think, and we also sometimes kind of check in with ourselves and wonder, what's the motivation behind getting another cat. But yeah, so it's an individual decision, and if you felt ready, then you were ready, is what I'd always say. And actually, how wonderful to have been able to give another home to a cat that really needed one.
Yeah, and she's a little sweetheart as well, which always helps. So
it definitely helps.
Yeah. We very briefly touched on ways that people can sort of, help keep their cat's memory alive and commemorate them and that sort of thing. Cats Protection, obviously, they can help with that, can't they, Victoria?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a few kind of simple resources that, again, depends on the person, depends on the situation, but if it's something that feels appropriate for you, we have a fantastic memory wall on the Cats Protection website, which enables you to create a permanent digital memorial for a much loved cat. So it's a space where you can upload photos, a funny story, or some heartfelt words, and it can also be really comforting to see the lives and stories of other cats and know that you're not alone in that grief. And then in the past year, we started the Cats Remembrance community on Facebook. So it's a closed Facebook group. It's just hit 10,000 members, actually, which just goes to show how many people have experienced cat loss, how many people want to be able to talk about their cats, share funny stories, share how much they're missing them. That's a really nice way, again, to celebrate the life of a cat, but also be part of a little club where everybody loves cats and is happy to listen to you speak about them. So yeah, if you look for the Cat Remembrance community on Facebook, then you can ask to join that. And then in terms of other ways to celebrate the life of a cat, I mean, it really depends on what feels right for you and when. There's no rush, but it can give a way to make sense of loss and to connect to those happier memories again, to take part in some sort of ritual of remembrance. So I'm a big fan of photo albums. Diona, a little bit like you, I've got a bauble of my cat Bertie that goes on the tree. He's the Christmas angel. He goes on the top of the tree every year, and I've got photos dotted about, and there are more pictures of my cats in this house probably than family members. So you're not alone with that. Memory boxes can be a really nice thing to do as well. So if there are items that your cat had that you don't want to part with, like a favourite toy, or I don't know,
wee blanket or something.
Yeah, absolutely. A whisker, those kind of things. It can be really nice to make a memory box. Some people write the story of their cat's life. That can be a really nice way to, again, connect with those happier memories, reflect on things that really used to make you laugh about them, funny little habits they had, quirks, nicknames. I was thinking, Adam, of Princess Fluffy Bum is already a fantastic start to a story, surely.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? I know.
The reinvention of Princess Fluffy Bum.
that sounds like her first album.
What an amazing header for a story. But yeah, it really depends on the individual, kind of how you want to remember your cat and how you feel comfortable sitting with those memories. Some people, if they've got outside space, might want to plant a favourite shrub. We heard of a really beautiful, touching example where someone planted a favourite flower, and then when the flower comes into bloom, they said that's their cat giving them flowers. And I just thought, that's so sweet. So sweet. But all of these things can just help acknowledge that love doesn't go anywhere. The grief kind of stays with us, but over time, the hope is that it gets easier to think back to happier times and not feel quite so raw and quite so upset about their loss.
Yeah. And Victoria, if people do want to access the Pause to Listen facility and the information available, how can people do that?
So we have a fantastic team of volunteer listeners who are all trained to speak with people about cat loss. They can be reached on our helpline, which is open Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And that is on free phone 0800 249494. If you're not somebody that really wants to speak and would prefer to express yourself in writing, then we also have an email service, so people can email in, and then a member of the team will respond, and that can kind of be another way just to get those feelings out and share it somewhere, because it can just be easier to speak with someone separate from everyday life if you're worried about how friends and family might react. So yeah, probably the easiest way to find all the Pause to Listen information is to go to the Cats Protection main website. So if you go to cats.org.uk/grief, then the links to Pause to Listen can be found there.
Amazing. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us and sharing that. And, it's such an important resource to have because, like you say, it's something that really impacts people. It's something which a lot of cat owners, you don't know how you're going to react until it happens. So I think actually, if you know that your cat might be coming to that kind of, the sad kind of end of the life, then it's worth maybe even reaching out before that happens to kind of get some preparation beforehand, because it's just a horrible thing. It's not a nice thing to have to go through. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Victoria. It's been really good to have you on and finding out more about the Paws to Listen initiative at Cats Protection. And time to say goodbye as well to you, Diona. Thank you so much for joining us on Cats Got Your Tongue. It's been amazing. You got a brand new stand-up show as well coming called Get Your Pink Back.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. My tour Get Your Pink Back, which is flamingo based, not cat based, but it is on tour around the UK and Ireland from May, June, and then all throughout the summer at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Amazing, brilliant. Well, it's been great to have you on Cats Got Your Tongue and finding out plenty more about your journey with cats. And you never know, one day you might get another one.
We'll see. My kids will be up and out before I do.
Yeah. Amazing. Diona, thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.
That is it for this week. Cats Got Your Tongue is made in association with the charity Cats Protection. Just want to say a big thanks to Diona Doherty and Victoria Foster from Paws to Listen for today's episode. And thank you to you for listening as well. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts, or you can watch us on YouTube. And don't forget, if you've got any cat's tales to be featured in a future episode, you can get involved in the podcast. You can send us your questions or funny stories about your cat, or basically anything cat related. You can get in touch by emailing us now, pod@cats.org.uk. Or of course, you can leave us a voice note on WhatsApp if you want on 07824 551076. Don't forget, tell your friends with cats about us. Tell anyone who loves cats about us, in fact. Share the podcast, give us a review, and we'll see you next time on Cats Got Your Tongue. So, I know from personal experience how a much-loved cat can feel like such an integral part of your family. And often, the impact our cats have on us lasts for years, even after they've passed away. Now, if you're looking for a way to celebrate and commemorate the life of your cat, Cats Protection have an online memory wall on their website where you can add your own photos and cherished memories. Visit cats.org.uk for more information.